Magic, White and Black, the science on finite and infinite life. Chapter 4. Life. I never was not, nor shall I hereafter cease to be. Bhagavad Gita. The universe of forms may be compared to a kaleidoscope in which the various forms of the original energy manifest themselves in an endless variety, appearing, disappearing, and reappearing again. As in a kaleidoscope, the pieces of variously colored glass do not change their substance, but only change their positions, and through the delusive reflections of mirrors at each turn of the instrument are made to appear in new constellations and figures. So, the one life manifesting itself appears in an infinite number of forms and colors, acting as matter or force, unconscious or conscious, blind or intelligent, voluntary or involuntary, from the atom, whose auras and others rush through a common vortex, invisibly but nevertheless substantial, up to the blazing suns whose photospheres extend over millions of miles, and from the microscopic amoeba whose protoplasm manifests only the rudiments of instinct, up to perfect man, whose intelligence conquers the gods. Forms are isolated and materialized thoughts. If you can hold on to a thought and isolate it from others, you call into existence a form. If you can impart to that form your consciousness, you may make it conscious. If you can invest it with the element of matter, you may make it visible and tangible. But few persons are able to hold on to one single thought, even for one single minute of time, because their minds are wavering and flickering. Few can transfer their consciousness because they cannot voluntarily forget their own selves. Few can control the element of earth because it is their master and they are attracted by it. The prototypes of all forms exist in the astral light, which is the universal soul in which resides the universal mind. The astral light has a universal matter being its more material substance. If a form comes into existence on the physical plane, its growth is simply a process by which something that already exists becomes visible and material. Or to speak more correctly, a lower state of vibration of the same element. This something is the idea or character of the form, and as each character is a unity, such a character will be distinctly expressed in all parts of the form. A human being, for instance, will not have the body of a man and the head of an animal, but its human character will be expressed in all its parts. And as the character constituting humanity is expressed in all human individuals, so is the character of an individual expressed in all its parts. This is a truth upon which the doctrines of astrology, phrenology, chiromancy, physiognomy, etc. are based, which, if rightly understood, are not only possibly true, but must be necessarily and unavoidably true, because nature is a unity. The nature of an animal, a plant, or a man is a unity, and is therefore expressed in all the parts of each respective form. It can be scientifically demonstrated that each component part of an organism is a microcosm, in which are represented the principles composing that organism. We may, by examining a part of a leaf, know that it comes from a plant, and by looking at an animal substance, see that it came from an animal, or by testing even the most minute part of a mineral or metal, know that it belongs to the mineral kingdom. Likewise, we may read a man's character in his hands or face or feet or in any other part of his body, if we have acquired the art of how to read it correctly. But if the power of interior perception is once attained, a still greater world of wonders is opened before the astonished sight of the seer. He will then perceive that every part of an organism bears the correct impression of the form of the whole, and upon each particle is photographed by the astral light the picture of the body to which it belongs. The suns and planets in space, as well as all terrestrial objects, have their souls, else they could have no bodies, because their bodies are only the external expressions of the soul, and their character rests in their souls. Their souls act upon each other and are acted upon by all, and as the characters of these souls change, so change the physical forms. These astral influences, constituting the soul of the universe, build up all forms. They modify the character and the growth of minerals, plants, and animals. They are the cause of endemic and epidemic diseases. They evolve in the course of ages variously shaped animals. They predetermine to a certain extent the destiny of men, and furnish the energies whose character impresses itself upon everything. Their signatures may be seen in the book of life belonging to every form, in the size and shape of features and limbs, in the lines of the hands, in the color of eyes and hair. They are the forces by which the universal mind puts his mark upon everything, and those who are able to read may find the true history of everything written upon the leaves of its soul. Likewise, every individual mind prints his character upon every one of his thoughts, words, and acts, and upon the soul of everything which comes within his sphere. Upon this law is based the science of psychometry. By this science we may obtain a true history of past events. By psychometrically examining a stone taken from a house, we may obtain correct information in regard to the former or present inhabitants of a house. Or a fossil may give a true description of antediluvian scenery and of the mode of life of prehistoric animals or men. By the psychometrical examination of a letter, we may obtain information about the person who wrote the letter and also of the place in which the letter was written. If this art were universally known and practiced, criminals could be detected by examining psychometrically a piece of the wall, the floor, or the furniture of the room in which a murder or robbery was committed. It would make an end to convicting innocent persons on circumstantial evidence or to letting the guilty escape for want of proof. For the psychometer would, by the superior powers of his perception with the spiritual eye, see the murderer or robber or counterfeiter as plain as if he had seen them with his external eyes while the deed was committed. each form is the external expression of a certain character which it represents, and as such, it has certain peculiar attributes which distinguish it from other forms. A change of its character is followed by a gradual change of the form. An individual who becomes degraded in morals will, in the course of time, show his degradation in his external appearance. Persons of a different appearance and different characters may, in the course of time, as their characters harmonize, resemble each other to a certain extent in appearance. Forms of life belonging to the same class and species resemble each other, and each nationality has certain characteristics expressed in the individuals belonging to it. A full-blooded Irishman will not easily be mistaken for a full-blooded Spaniard, although the two may be dressed alike. But if they both emigrate to America, their children or grandchildren will in time lose the national characteristics which their ancestors possessed. Change of character changes the form, but a change of external form does not necessarily change the character. A man may lose a leg and become a cripple, and still his character may remain the same as before. A child may grow into a man, and still his character remain that of a child unless modified by education. These facts are incontrovertible proofs that the character of a being is more essential than his external form, that the form is elusive, and that the reality is a principle which is independent of form. If the character of an individual were to depend on his inherited form, children born of the same parents and educated under the same circumstances would always manifest the same mental characteristic. But it is well known that the characters of such children often differ widely from each other, and they may possess characteristics which their parents do not possess. If, as it frequently happens, children show the same or similar talents and intellectual capacities as their parents, such a fact is by no means a proof that the parents of the child's physical body are also the parents or producers of its intellectual germ. But it may be taken as an additional evidence of the truth of the doctrine of reincarnation, because the spiritual monad of the child would be naturally attracted in its efforts to reincarnate to the bodies of parents whose mental and intellectual constitution would correspond nearest to its own talents and inclinations, developed during a previous earthly life. Characters may exist independent of external conditions. The latter can only modify but not create the former. The best soil will not produce an oak tree unless an acorn is present, and a cholera bacillus will not produce cholera where the predisposition to that disease does not already exist. Forms may facilitate the development of character, but they do not create it. And persons that appear in every respect alike may be of a very different character. How can we account for such moral and intellectual discrepancies in forms that are merely alike, as long as we shut our eyes to the truth that which is essential in a being, whether rational or irrational, is its character, and that its form is only the external expression of that internal and invisible character, which may survive after the form has ceased to exist, and after the dissolution of the form finds its expression again in another form. Forms die, but their character remains unchanged after their death, preserved in the astral light, like the thoughts of man stored up in his memory after the events that called them into existence have passed away. A character does neither die nor change after it has left the form, but after a time of rest in the subjective state, it will re-embody itself again in a newborn objective form, to grow and change its nature during the life of the form. Seen from this standpoint, death is life, because during the time that death lasts, that which is essential in a form does not change. Life is death, because only during life in the form the character is changed, and old tendencies and inclinations die and are replaced by others. Each form is an incarnation of a certain character. Our passions and vices may die while we live. If they survive us, they will be born again.